Hi, this is Heather from Especially Paper. Today I'll show you how to make a pleated star paper ornament. Check the description below for a link to the template. I use the SVG file to cut the strip on my Cricut machine, which saves a lot of time, and I have nice precise score lines, which makes folding so much easier. If you prefer to cut and score by hand, use the PDF version of the template. If you're a Cricut user, at the end of this video, I'll share a few tips for setting up the file in Cricut Design Space. Start with an accordion fold. Fold back and forth on the parallel lines. I'm using 70-pound text weight paper. I don't recommend cardstock for this project because it would be more difficult to get nice clean folds. Other supplies you'll need for this project are craft glue, strong thread and a needle, and twine or whatever string you prefer to hang the ornament. When you reach the end of the rectangle, squeeze the folded paper to reinforce the creases. I like to repeat the accordion fold in the opposite direction. In the final piece, the paper folds in both directions, so it helps if you create the memory in the paper of going both directions. Next step, crease the diagonal lines. Try not to extend the crease past the scored line. It's hard to avoid a little bit of extension, and that's okay. Just try not to let it go too far. I prefer to crease one side of the diagonal scores, then work my way down the other side. Now I'm just nudging the creases into shape. This is when a video is super helpful because it's hard to explain. The middle section of the rectangle becomes the outer rim of the ornament, and the creases along the sides fold down. The narrow edges of the center diamonds form the peaks of the star, and the wide point of the diamonds form the valleys and should be folded in or down. Now that the creases are in place, I can start compressing the folds. Once you get it started, it will start to take shape if you've taken the time to crease the folds. It takes some practice, but after a couple it'll get easier. My first couple of ornaments were kind of messy with sloppy folds, but by the third ornament I had the hang of it, and it's gotten easier as I've made more. Now it takes me about 5 minutes to fold one piece. Let's add a loop for hanging. I'm using clear fishing line. If I had been thinking ahead, I would have made the hole a little bit smaller. I used baker's twine for the first few ornaments, so I sized the hole for the thicker loop, but ultimately I've settled on the clear line so that it's less visible on the tree. If you're cutting on your Cricut or Silhouette machine, you can resize that hole to best fit the type of string that you're using, or remove the hole altogether if you don't plan to hang your star. Now that the loop is in place, glue the short ends of the rectangle together to form a tube. I like to position the overlap so that most of the seam will be in a valley in the finished piece. Spread glue on the end section and use the 2 holes in that section to help with alignment. Check this out, the folding memory is in the paper. It wants to go back into the crease shape. I love that part. To finish the ornament, pass a strong thread through the holes in the pleats. If you're cutting and scoring by hand, you could leave the holes uncut and just thread the needle through the paper. It would be a little harder to do, but I don't see any reason that wouldn't work. Pull the thread until you have a small loop and tie a knot. Don't pull the thread too tight or the center will bunch up on itself. Leave a little bit of give. This is just a regular double knot. I tied a couple of extra times just to make sure it doesn't come loose. If you'd like, you can manipulate the position of the thread so that the knot is inside of the ornament. With this version, I don't worry about that too much since the thread is a good match for the paper. Repeat the threading process on the other side of the ornament. I searched online to see how many ornaments I should make for a 7-foot Christmas tree. Depending on the site, it was a pretty wide range, but the consensus was about 105 small ornaments for a moderately full tree, up to 230 for a very full tree. So I have a lot of crafting to do. Here's the finished ornament. And here's another paper ornament that I'll be making this year. The template for both of these is at especiallypaper.com. If you're a Cricut user, hang on for another minute and I'll share some quick tips for setting up this file in Cricut Design Space. Once you've uploaded the SVG file to Cricut Design Space, the operation for the score lines needs to be set. By default, Cricut will cut all the lines. In the Layers palette, select the lines. In the Operation menu at the top, select Score. You can remove or resize the hole in the center to suit your needs. Select the top line item in the Layers palette and click Attach at the bottom to keep the pieces together on the cutting mat. In the next screen, you can adjust the number of project copies to cut to on an 8.5 by 11 sheet. By default, the machine asks for the scoring wheel, but I'm using the scoring stylus. So I edit the tools to swap to the other tool. That's it for this project. I hope you give it a try.